I am here this morning with my great friend Don Boudreaux, fellow economist at the George Mason University Economics Department, former chairman of our department also. I've just written Build Baby Build, and I know that Don is a giant fan, as I am, of French economist Frederic Bastiat. I've got a whole chapter where I get to hang out with Frederic Bastiat, so I thought I'd talk to Don about it. All right, Don, so have you ever wanted to hang out with Frederic Bastiat?
Oh yeah, yeah. On my list of people who, if I could bring them back to life for a dinner, Bastiat is on the short list for sure.
You actually went to see his birthplace or something, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was when he turned 100. Oh, excuse me. The bicentennial of his birth was in 2001, June of
Mm-hmm.
2001, and I and a group of other people, Dwight Lee was in that group. We all went to his hometown of Mougron, France, which is in the southwest part of France, and we were met by protesters.
Yeah, the Tobin tax lunatics.
Yeah, that's right. Being maintenant. Yeah, and so they didn't but our after we finished celebrating Bastiat's, they tried to disrupt it. Uh, but nevertheless, these protesters crashed our buffet table of food. They weren't too shy to steal our food. So Bastiat would have been amused.
All right, you put a lot of effort into making intro econ understandable to any human being that cares to listen. How would you give could you give a quick version of Bastiat's big idea in what is seen and what is not seen?
Yeah, and of course it's an idea that runs through all good economics. It's in Adam Smith. It's in Milton Friedman. It's even in more the philosophical economists like Friedrich Hayek. So the idea is that it's what Deirdre McCloskey calls having to stay beyond the first act.
Mhm.
The actions that we take in society as individuals and as policymakers, they nearly always have more than one consequence, the immediate, easily seen consequence. They have trails of consequences that extend beyond them. And if all you look at is or notice is the first most obvious consequence of some policy or some action, you're likely to assess the merits or demerits of that action mistakenly because you're going to miss most of what it's responsible for. So lots of private actions in the market might look unseemly if you look only at the first consequence, but they turn out to be wonderful if you look at the full train of consequences. Far too many government interventions look really lovely on the surface, but when you dig down beneath, when you see what most people ignore, you see these consequences are so bad that the policy appears to be ugly and is revealed as ugly.
Yeah, so the way I like to put it is just missed opportunities matter.
Yeah, you're
A
more
child
concise.
may not understand that there was something they could have had instead of what they got that's way better than what they're looking at,
Yeah,
but an adult needs to consider possibility of missed opportunities. Now, the
yeah,
reason why I put Bastiat into the book was literally that a lot of the arguments against deregulating housing and construction generally are aesthetic. It's about I don't like the way that it would look. I like the way that things are right now.
literally what is seen. Yeah,
Yeah. So, what I really want to do is to say, all right, well, look, the problem is that if government doesn't allow you to build something, you never get to see it, and then it remains the unseen. But in this graphic novel format, I actually can show you my version of what the world would look like instead. So, I'm thinking is
yeah,
that this graphic format is a way of getting around or circumventing this problem that Bastiat talked about, saying, look, okay, you have trouble visualizing an alternate reality. I'll show you the alternate reality. Now,
yeah.
obviously it's kind of a cheap trick in a way because I can show you whatever I want, but then again, this is fighting fire with fire because so many critics just paint the most lurid and paranoid pictures.
I don't think it's a cheap trick at all. I mean, all good economics involves to one degree or another explaining the unseen,
Mm-hmm.
and in any form you can, in principle, claim to be something that's unseen that's not really real. But I think what you do is very. I mean, if you show that what is unseen is plausible,
Yes, that's crucial, right? So yeah,
yeah,
what's cheap is
which
that
you do,
obviously I could just go and make everything look like a paradise
yeah,
just because I'm the one that is drawing the pictures, but still,
yeah.
uh, it,
You know, before
it
before you go, let me just make
seems more than fair to me. more
I
than.
think the graphic novel idea, I mean, is brilliant, and because you literally see graphically, some visual portrayals of the things that most economists just talk about in words, but sort of a halfway effort between what you do and what most economists do is Russ Roberts' book, The Choice on Trade, where he has this imaginary discussion with a resurrected David Ricardo.
It was definitely good.
And
Yeah,
that's
so
the
I
way.
want to actually go and share one of the pages from the book, if you'll
Yeah.
indulge me, Don.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, here I am driving with Bastiat.
I don't see it
Yeah,
here.
and this is actually a picture from the California coastline, I believe. So here we are, and you go there. It looks very nice.
Yeah.
But over here, we've got the same coastline, but we developed it.
Yeah.
What was striking to me about when I was doing these pictures is there is this notion of human beings always mess nature up. And yet the most beautiful coastlines in the world, I think, according to almost everyone, are actually your gorgeous developed coastlines like the Amalfi Coast in Italy.
Yeah.
If you had no people there, it would look nice, but it is actually the combination of the architecture and the nature that really gives you a true marvel of the world.
That's one of my favorite pages in the book, by the way, for the very reason that you mentioned. I noticed that too. I mean, you look at just the top picture, you say, oh yeah, that's a pretty coastline, and then you look at the bottom picture, which obviously is drawn in the European style, right? A lot of Americans, the same ones who are enthusiastic supporters of the housing regulations that you protest against, they're high among those who travel to Europe and come back oohing and awing and gushing about how beautiful Europe is. But Europe's, the coastlines of the lakes in northern Italy, they're developed and they're beautiful.
Yeah, so with Europe, people were living there for long before there was any kind of a conservation movement or any environmentalist movement. People needed places just to exist, and as a result, it's very hard in the main populated areas of Europe to find anything that is not touched by the hand of man. But that's why people go there. That's why it's the tourist central of the world. It's like this is the most amazing area because it combines natural beauty with human-made beauty in this most remarkable way.
Yep.
Now, so one other thing I wanted to talk to you about, you Don. So you spent a lot of time arguing with national conservatives. So you just start by saying, what is it that they are seeing with their own eyes that is upsetting them so much?
Yeah. So they see. I know where you're going. So let's get right to it. Right. So protectionists have always seen the jobs that are destroyed by imports. And so, well, we got to stop that. There is something additional that the national conservatives today are seeing or think they're seeing, that jobs are destroyed, and whereas in the past workers would move from one region to another, they do less of that today. So the so-called China shock is a very famous paper by Author Hansen and Dorn and Hansen. It's not a paper about the overall impact of job losses because of trade with China to the U.S. economy. They focus on those regions particularly subject to import competition from China. And they find there that the workers in those regions don't adjust to the changing economic circumstances as quickly as workers did in the past. And obviously, the cost of moving is one reason. If in 1950 there were fewer housing regulations in the next town or the next state, people were more likely to move, even though it was a much poorer time. Today, with housing being made more costly by regulations, that is a factor that obstructs the ability of workers to move to those parts of the country where the opportunities are best, and keeps them stuck in parts of the economy that are stagnating.
Although, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't really noticed national conservatives complaining about housing costs much.
No. They just complain about the trade, right?
Right. Yeah. So you'll have researchers saying that people are moving less, but the obvious story is, well, back when California was cheap, then people all over the country were moving there for great weather and a better life. And now it's like, well, move to California for a better life. Where will I live?
Yeah. No, you're right. National conservatives. So the housing regulation obstruction to moving is in a way a blessing for the national conservatives, because they want to complain about trade. And so what you point out is this large factor that, you know, the economist's story about trade, of course, is that, yes, of course, trade destroys particular jobs, but you know, workers adjust, and over time, the economy's better off because new opportunities emerge and people move to the opportunities. Well, the deregulation that you propose would once again make that the reality that it was in the past, and it's less of a reality today. And so that there's no doubt in my mind that the adjustment time that the time that it takes to adjust today to trade shocks is almost certainly slower than it was in the past. And there's no doubt in my mind that one reason that it's almost certainly slower is the housing regulation that you so brilliantly expose and decry.
Well, thank you.
If we get rid of that, or reduce that regulation, you solve not only a housing problem, you also help solve the so-called trade adjustment problem.
Right now, Don, so obviously Nobel Prize winner Angus Deaton and my dissertation advisor Ann Case, who wrote Deaths of Despair and the Future of Capitalism, they would not be classified as national conservatives. But have you noticed national conservatives reading them, citing them? I'm not a little unclear on what the connection is.
They do. They're very opportunistic. They use sometimes they actually mention them by name, but the term deaths of despair does appear in writings by people like Orrin Cass and you know, now Brink Lindsay, and I'm not saying those they in particular use it, but I see it a lot in the pro-protectionist national conservative literature. Yeah.
Right now, I'm going to say that when you argue with the national conservatives, you usually seem to be pretty annoyed with them. I can understand that. But still, like I'm very inclined just to go and take them at their word and hear them say, look, we're really upset about all these non-college males who are struggling in the modern information economy. They just don't feel right doing service sector jobs. It just contradicts their identity as a tough macho guy. Furthermore, this is leading to all sorts of horrible family breakdown. But the main thing that I really want to say in this book, and I actually also wrote an essay just called Revive Construction, Not the Rust Belt, is that even in the most extreme protectionist scenarios, the idea that you're going to be able to create a noticeable number of new non-college jobs is just very small. So in the piece, I just went over the most extreme kinds of protectionism you can talk about. And again, the fundamental economic problem, I don't need to tell you, Don, is this. I mean, imagine that you just were given 5 brand new TV sets on your door. Like, what would your reaction be, Don?
Well, I only need one, really. Maybe.
Yeah, like, you know, like they're free. Take them. It's like, look, I don't care how cheap they are. There is a pretty low limit to the number of television sets that I want.
That's right.
Now, on the other hand, imagine that someone says you can go and have a house twice the current size, same location for the same amount of money you're currently paying. How do you feel about that?
I'll take it. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and this really does reflect that how manufacturing, despite a lot of protectionism, still, it's basically had a low-level regulation, and we've been able to witness the usual effects of markets, which they've made it so abundant, you can barely give this stuff away anymore. On the other hand, housing is the sector that we have strangled, and therefore people are still actually hungry for more. And that's why my proposal of housing deregulation, I think, makes so much sense as a practical way to not only raise living standards in general, but in particular, just to create a lot of new jobs for non-college males. Because, like I say in the book, who do you think is going to build this housing? It's not going to be us professors. Non-college males currently do almost all construction. If we deregulate it, they're the ones that are going to be doing it. And like I say in the book, this is so much more realistic than protectionism, because right now we got about 10 million jobs in construction. It's totally plausible that we deregulation, we can double that for decades. 10 million more non-college jobs for males is a large dent in what people are complaining about.
That's a brilliant way to put it. I mean, it really is. Neither you nor I nor really any other American needs 5 televisions, but there are 5 televisions are affordable. We would all like a lot more housing if we could get it.
Yeah. I mean, you can make televisions free, like standard manufacturer goes, you can make them free, and people don't really want that many more than what they've got, because we're almost satiated due to the incredible performance of low regulation capitalism. Not satiated for housing, not by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, when you really start thinking about it, this is something where you're rich enough, then probably you want to have multiple homes, and most people would, in fact.
Yeah. And
Multiple
here's
homes, multiple locations, big, spacious, awesome palaces.
well, we know that's what rich people do. Is rich people have multiple homes.
Yeah, if they
that-
are rich
that's
enough.
yeah.
All right.
And
So last question for you, Don. Right. All right. I know you've been interacting with national conservatives. I'm always just trying to figure out some way of talking to people that don't already agree with me in a way that actually will reach them. What are my chances, Don?
with national
Yeah,
conservatives,
what are my chances?
I'm not
Really, yeah,
optimistic.
and let me just preface this with national conservatives are listening, prove Don wrong.
Please, by all means, I encourage you to listen to Bryan on this and on other topics. Unfortunately, I'm not impressed with their open-mindedness.
Mhm.
Um, I wish I had better news on that front, and I could be proven wrong. I wouldn't bet my pension that they won't pay attention to you. But their agenda is is to make the economy stagnant. They
Mhm.
wouldn't put it that way, but they want to keep the economy from changing. And of course,
So
that's
you,
what
so you
brings
think they're more focused on turning back the clock than actually solving the problems of
yes,
non-college males that they, I think, are pretty reasonably concerned about. So,
a lot of
Case
them.
and Deaton, like they're not wrong to say that non-college males, in some important ways, really are doing quite a bit worse than they were 40 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I don't doubt that the what you point to in the book is a major contributor to that. I think there are other things going on, but
Mhm.
that's a major contributor to reducing mobility. The famous story, in the 1930s, when the Dust Bowl hit Oklahoma, these were very poor people. They got up and they moved to
Mhm.
California.
Mhm.
That's 100
Yep.
years ago almost. And now we're much richer. We can afford to move better in a way, but we don't, not as much because of we're not building baby as much as we should be building.
Yeah. So as I point out in the book, in the Steinbeck Scrapes of Wrath, it did not work out for the Okies, but that was fiction written by a communist. So
Yeah,
what a
yeah.
big
Oh,
surprise. But
yeah.
in the real world, moving to opportunity normally does work out.
Our mutual friend Bob Higgs, his family did that. They were Okies.
Oh, wow.
Dust Bowl hit, or bad times hit, and they moved to California.
All right. So been fantastic talking to you, Don. Always a pleasure. And let's get lunch sometime soon.
Likewise, Bryan. Take care.
Talk to you later.
Talk to you. Bye.